conversation with one of my brothers about this particular issue and how to navigate the burden that is mental health. We are in a place where the emotional and psychological well-being of men doesn't get talked about enough, especially in Africa, in Uganda, where if you talk about mental health, you seem to be, I don't know, cuckoos. Like it's something that we just sort of try and scatter around. But today, we are going to challenge that narrative. Today, we're going to have a very, I think, deep and profound session that we're going to be focusing on a lot of honesty, healing, hopefully hope for you if you are dealing with some mental health and mental wellness issues that will be good for you. We will share some of our experiences. Hopefully they will be useful for you. And the idea is, how do we go from purpose to be able to find pain? How do we find a better balance to the communities that we have and have conversations, but also just care for each other? I'm joined by three very, very special people. One who I think is going to become my friend. He hasn't been yet. I will leave him for last. I'll start by introducing two who already are my friends. Right next to me, John Wamanya, who is an entrepreneur, a community leader. He sits on many, his titles are very, very, very many, but brings a very strong voice on the intersection of business, masculinity, emotional resilience. He always looks good. I hate the way he looks because it makes me look bad. He's a Rotarian, a very passionate Rotarian. If you've watched the Peace concert, I think he's one of the top 3 or 4 people behind that. So, Joe, good to see you.
Good to be here, Ben. Thank you for having me. A very good morning, our friends online.
It's good to see you blushing. My other panelists today are also a good friend. I've known David for a very, very long time. He's one of those crazy people. When you meet David, it's very difficult to reconcile his CV and his personality because the two are as far apart as day and night. David Kabiswa is an inspirational speaker, he's a leadership coach, he's an organizational development consultant, he's passionate about helping young people discover their gifts and guiding individuals and organizations through transformational reflection and purpose-driven growth. I've done this with him on a number of platforms, but he's also just an all-round cool person who has refused to grow old.
I like that last one.
But you have refused to grow old.
Are you sending him there forcefully?
Choice.
Good to
So
see you,
good
David.
morning. Thank you, Ben. Good morning, people online. We are glad to be here with you and hope we shall engage. Yeah, I'm glad to be here.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And my new friend, Moses Mpanga, who is a clinical psychologist, is a mental health writer, he's the founder and executive director of Mindness Uganda. His entire career has been dedicated to breaking medical health stigma, but also creating access to compassionate, culturally grounded care for men and youth. And just listening and talking to you, it's very clear that this passion is quite strong. He also happens to have the sort of beard I wanted when I was growing up, but unfortunately, have not been able to get. So good to see you. I want a beard like yours, but look, I have Kaweke. Mine I just can't.
Well, hold on to what you have. Hold on to what you have.
Unfortunately, the way it is, my wife says I have to, get rid of it. So I'm sure she's not going to be happy, seeing me in public looking like this. But yeah, good to see you.
Good to be here, and thank you so much for having me. Anybody would say it's a feminine thing to say, "Can we be friends?" As a man.
Yes.
But let's be friends.
Yeah, and there is need for that, and we'll talk about that in detail as we go through the conversation. I should start by asking the 3 of you to congratulate Liverpool for winning the Premier League this
Now
season.
here.
No.
These are very important things. Go on, come on.
I can't over my trade potty.
See, these are the haters. Hating is not good for you as a man. It's very important to acknowledge game where game is. So the whole of this month, every weekend, I always do this every weekend, but in particular now in public, I'm wearing the Liverpool jersey because we did the incredible things. So to all the Copites out there, Nyua, you never walk alone. Congratulations. Right. Let's get into our conversation today. I'll start asking you, Joe, and then David before we come to Moses over here. How do you feel you are doing mentally? How is your mental health? Is that a question that, if someone asks you, you can answer easily? And what is that answer for you at the moment where you are?
Thank you, Ben. If you had asked me this question about 3 months ago, I would have told you my mental health is not good.
I know your story.
Yeah.
I know what you've been going through, and I want to hear you answer now, based on where you have been.
Well, now you would have called me. Now you would have called me to be a part of this webinar, and I would not have been available. You would have called me to say, "Can you come and speak to people?" And I'll tell you, you know what? I'm not in the mental space to be able to do that. Asking me now is that it is much better.
Well, thank God for that.
It's much better. And again, the question would now be, better how?
Right.
Better because I've been able to bounce back.
Yeah.
I've been able to bounce back. I've been able to come to a table and have a discussion about what has been bothering me.
Yeah.
So it's there. It's at that point now. Yes.
In a place where it's getting better.
Yeah.
Just for context, I should tell you, so I've known Joe for almost our entire adult lives. He's one of my very, very good friends. About 6 weeks ago, Joe calls me and he beefs. He says, "Ben," because during COVID, you and I used to meet every week.
Yes.
We used to sit and pray and, and spend time together. And then Joe calls me about 6 weeks ago and says, "Ben, what happened to us?" Right? And it's like, and I knew what you were saying, because it was absolutely important that we actually find time to be able to be together. And when we then found time to reconnect, I got to get a little bit of a glimpse of some of the stuff that you'd been dealing with and how heavy that was. Things that are way beyond your control but can actually break even the strongest of men. And for me, it was incredible just for you being able to reach out and say, "You know what, there's something that I need to be able to do about this," and I commend you greatly for doing that.
And Ben, thank you for having me in that space at that point when I called and you said, "You know what, I possibly may have a solution for you.
Yeah.
Could you please come? There's a space here where men gather, the boys gather, and it was an incredible space. I hope I get a chance to speak about that.
No, you definitely will. And so and actually from that time, you've basically been with us almost every weekend, so that's incredible.
Yes.
Mr. Kabiswa.
Yes, sir.
You always put on this show that everything is perfect with you. I've never seen you look angry. And I've been with you on countless events, and we've done lots and lots of activities together. Does that suggest that your mental health is hunky-dory, that all is well?
All is well. Personally, I'd actually use mental wellness as opposed to mental health. But I have made certain decisions. Because a couple of years ago, I got introduced to something they call life skills education. All right? And that is the thing of psychological well-being and social well-being. So I've been teaching a lot of that, and I try to live by those sorts of principles. And down the line, I also, got, some bit of, got purpose in my life. So if I rate myself, I would say it's okay. Now, saying it's okay doesn't mean that there's the absence of stressors. But because the stressors are there, and because of some of the skills I believe in, and apply this and apply that, and maybe even in the course of the discussion, we shall talk about that. So it is okay.
You talk about, and I'll come back to this a bit later on, but you talk about finding purpose.
Yeah.
But the way you say it makes it sound like you just found that more recently as opposed to much earlier. Would that be a fair assumption?
In terms of writing a personal mission statement, maybe, I can say that about 3 years ago. But in terms of getting purpose, there's a lot earlier.
Yeah.
And I tried to get a scientific way about it, rather than people thinking, or like I'd grown up in church circles and people say you'll know God's will. Then you get somewhere else and somebody says you'll know your purpose. No, you don't just know.
Yeah.
You've got to be deliberate.
And find it.
And there's some skills and tools that you can use to do that.
And you've been on the planet how long now?
Man, long time.
How old?
Hey, when you see this thing, they say salamiak. So that kind of question doesn't come. They see this, they know that guy.
If you see him with a hat like that,
Hey.
don't lend him money.
Hey, they say that. Or they also say that guy has another family. Man, they have judged these hearts of us. Nah.
Yeah. So
Ben, you ask about how many years he's been here, and then it reminds me of a time when a colleague of mine tried to pluck something from my beard. The very first time I started graying, and I'm like, brother, that's a gray hair.
I know, right?
You know, and it's what comes with the continued growth and you know, the anxiety that comes with it. So when he asks you and you're
Yeah.
like, hey,
Hey.
not into that now.
And there is anxiety that comes with it, and I'm sure we'll talk about it as well as part of our conversation today. But coming to you, Moses, again, so Joe talks about mental health. I had David talk about mental wellness. Is there a difference between those two things? What difference is there for that? And in the same regard, for you, how are you? How is your mental health and your mental wellness after you've defined both of them?
Yes. First of all, how is my mental health, my mental wellness? One is part of the other, but I'll start with how mine is. When I came here, just before just before coming on, I got a notification, a mobile money notification, and I received money. But the money I received wasn't the money that I've been waiting for 3 months. All right, I should be receiving that money, and I was expecting to get it today, you know, and so that put me quite aback. All right, and so there are frustrations that I'm dealing with, but I'm managing. All right, but I have had a very meaningful conversation just before coming on here, and that deposited into my happiness. So when we talk about mental health, we are talking about the balance between the two. You know, we have the pathological aspect of it, and then we have the psychosocial illness of it. What are your worries? What are you thinking of? And are you able to manage them? You know, so if you're able to manage them, that's part of mental health. But a lot of times we look at the sickness. So when you ask what is mental health, and by the time I'm done with this, I think we'll be able to see where we all are. Of course, academically, it's the state of well-being in which Ben, John, David, and everybody on the call are able to cope with their normal stressors. So what is stressing you right now? Realize your ability, you know, and after realizing your ability, contribute to the communities that you might be in. You've talked about Job being a Rotarian. How are you contributing in that community that you're in? Not entirely the illness aspect of it, but those three aspects are what defines what mental health
But there is an illness aspect to it, though, and
Oh, yes, yes.
we'll probably talk about that. If we then very briefly talk about what are the things that would then be a composition of this mental health and wellness, or rather the lack of which would affect that. It's usually the same stuff, isn't it? Right? Money, right, for the men. I think David talked about purpose. Turning 50 and you realize, oh, what's the plan I have? I don't know where I'm going. I think we call it the midlife crisis. Right? That becomes a thing as well. Relationships,
yes.
You've been married 25 years and you find out that 3 of your 5 children are not yours.
Oh, yes.
I cannot believe
that's a tough one.
That's some of the stuff, right? So usually
one,
it comes down to what? Money,
You know,
relationships.
you see, Ben, when you talk about that way, all the areas that you have mentioned now, it comes back to the quality of your thoughts. So all these things that you're talking about, how am I going to perceive them? How am I going to think about them? How am I going to interpret them? The money, the having it or not having it, how am I interpreting that? What are my thoughts? Because it's my thoughts about that is going to either push me to have it if I don't have it, or to keep it if I have it already. So the quality of your thoughts in all this.
There's something you said before we came on air that caught my attention, and you said that this notion that it is possible to have a life where there's no stress is an absolute fallacy, right?
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Because when you look at it, you know, I mean, gentlemen, as we spoke, you learned that we need to be pushed. We need some necessary healthy pressure to go on. And what we talked about is that you're never not stressed. You're either stressed or you're coping with stress. Inability of coping with stress is now what becomes a problem.
That for me was a big takeaway. You're either stressed or coping with stress, but stress is always going to be there. I keep telling people that a car cannot move in a vacuum. There's got to be friction for the car to move. So even for you you cannot grow where there is no there must be something that pushes you to make you want to grow. It will be either lack of something or desire for something or need for something. Speaking of, David, let me come to you, you know, as we try and go a little bit deeper, because mostly because you've been around longer than the rest of us. So you You have a lot more experience from that perspective.
Ben needs no microphone to project that.
Yeah, no, you just
They call that pressure.
no pressure. No, but this thing, you mentioned the word, and I think it's absolutely critical that we talk a bit about it, because I think that it's one of the biggest issues that affects our mental health and mental wellness. And as you do, just remind to the guys who are joining us that this is brought to you by Aqua Wellness Spa here at Nakuru Skies. You want to come. One of the most important things about your wellness is being able to come and have a massage and just have a treatment. Joe, have you had a facial done?
I have not. I have been here. I
Yeah.
have been here to do a massage.
A massage,
But
not
I
a
had
facial.
Muscle X. I don't know that I would come. I didn't know that I'd come to do the stone thing. But we'll speak about that.
Yeah,
in a
no,
bit.
I find it very interesting when a man tells me massage. No one. I'm like, you're going to die of stress.
So have you been here?
Always. What happens is that usually when you start your session, for me at least, usually within about 4.5 minutes or so, I black out. I have to be woken up to be told, hey, sir, your money is finished. It's time for you to go, which tells you how important it is. So, but David, this thing about purpose. How important is purpose as a part of forming a man's mental well-being and your mental health? How critical is it?
How critical is purpose? And yes, because we talk about men, we shall talk about men. But purpose is important for everybody.
Yeah.
All right. So purpose is the thing which gives you direction, and you know that this way I'm going. For example, the purpose today was to come to Skies.
Yeah.
So now, because of that purpose in mind, it was affecting which roads I was choosing, the timing, how I was going to, what time I was going to leave, what I wanted to be there, which road might have a jam. And that's the thing that the purpose does. Purpose kind of sets like an anchor.
Yeah.
All right. So it is very important. And through the work that I do, I'll be honest, I notice many people do not have a purpose. So for me, a little bit of what I do
Not
is
that
to
they're
help
not
them.
doing anything.
Not that they're not doing anything,
Right.
but the various things that they're doing are from a stereotypical role-based thing. I'm a father, so I must do. But if ask him 4 years from today, what do you want to do? What do you want in the children? It's like things just happen. It's just happenstance.
Yeah.
So many people don't have purpose. And
Yeah.
so one of the key things that I do is help somebody get a purpose. And then once they get a purpose, they're able now to prioritize very many other things.
Yeah.
So purpose to me is very, very important.
If it is, then we need to talk a little bit about how do you find your purpose? What does that mean, right? To be able to find your purpose. I keep telling young people, I discovered my purpose, thankfully, when I was a little younger, and then I got distracted by the hustle and bustle of the rat race until I dug some really big dishes for myself that then now made me question who I was and what I was doing. And one of the things that I think for me helped me cope, right, with the stress was being able to find a purpose and my purpose. And what that enabled me to do was to look beyond my current problems, right? I've shared very publicly on almost every platform about the struggles I've had with money and debt, which I'm still dealing with, and I'll probably be dealing with for another 5-6 years, right? And that takes its toll on you. But being able to have something else that then keeps me going, that makes me say, you've got to keep going because this is not about you, for me has been the thing that then gives me grounding. And my purpose, thankfully, which I discovered, and I keep telling people this, is to help young people become better versions of themselves. And so I happen to have a gift with children. Joe's daughter Zoe is a very good friend. When we hang, I just have a way of connecting with kids, right? And I noticed that they listen to me, that they pay attention to me, that they lean on me for advice. And so what I've then done with that is to say, what can I do with this gift that I have been given, with this privilege that young people give to me to be able to actually listen to what I say, that then helps them become better versions of themselves by not making the mistakes I have made, but also by being able to now make good decisions going forward. So that's something that I see as being my core purpose. So everything else that I do, working at Next Media as head of corporate affairs, being an MC, doing cars, all of that stuff, for me is just a by the way. And the thing that brings me more life, more fulfillment than anything else is being able to look a young person in the eye and hear them say, you know what, you said something that I'm going to use to make some changes in my life. I don't think you can, find anything better than that for me. So that for me has been the big thing. So.
And maybe just because David has spoken about purpose, and I have structured my life along 4 ways.
Yeah.
It's either I'm doing God, or I'm doing family.
Yeah.
Family includes the children.
Yeah.
I'm doing design, which is work.
Yeah.
And then I'm doing Rotary.
Yeah.
Over the last couple of years, I have found that that was supposed to be the order.
Right.
And all of a sudden, and I know you're a Rotarian, you will possibly you will relate, or a couple of people will relate. Rotary has taken over everything else that I do, and because I love it, I love it with a passion.
You do.
But in that order of things, I have a glass, I have a ball, I am juggling many things, and it would actually be a lot easier to get that ball on the floor first and juggle the glasses, which is marriage, which is children, which is bills, which is work, which is design, and that other thing is taken over. But again, I don't know whether that means I have found my purpose, David, in the four areas that I have picked, or that what Ben has said for him to be able to give to the children and make them better is a purpose. Does that speak to me in terms of that area? And maybe
It's interesting that you should say that. When I look at purpose, there are three intersecting things. Now, the first thing must be passion.
Yeah.
And a circle of passion.
Yeah.
And then in the next circle that I talk about and think about is what you can be best at. And then the third element is what drives your economic engine. All right? Now, the intersection of those sorts of things is where a little bit of you will find your purpose, but then the next stage I would say, write a mission statement. Now, passion, because you'll have engine, you'll have fuel, you can always go. Passion, and they say, the reason why they must intersect, passion you can be busy and satisfied the whole day, but if you do not have the discipline of making the money, passion will not put food on the table.
Yeah.
So you've got to, but also in passion, you can be passionate about certain things, but not the best at them. So you've got to think in that passionate thing, all right? Ben is passionate about young people. He's got the element of being able to speak and stuff like that. How does all that come together? He said that this is secondary, but you see, that's the platform where we see him for those young people to come. So if he did not have that profile, they would not come.
That's a good
So
point.
even those sorts of things that as they intersect, that's where the passion is. So for you, it's okay. Yeah. In fact, for me, after I did that passion, then I chose certain elements. I chose 8. Father, personal development, spouse, brother, those sorts of things. So what you've done, Rotary is also my thing. Now, in those things, those become the big rocks. Then from there, you plan your life. What am I doing this week in Rotary? What am I doing this thing? What am I doing for the children? You're okay. So maybe you could just add a personal mission statement which puts all those things together, and you're good to go.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
so
think it might, as Moses comes in, it might be important if you're following online that just because you see these 4 guys here speaking good English, it doesn't mean they've got it figured out. I think it's safe to say that all of us are just trying to find our way around. Because it's very easy. It becomes too much pressure for someone.
Yes.
Because they look at how messed up their life is.
Yes.
And then they are seeing Joe saying how he has his purpose, it's lined up, he has a 4-point plan, for all these things. And you're thinking, me, what am I doing with my life?
It's funny because it's what I wanted to speak into. I've seen a lot of times when we lose ourselves in seemingly good outlooks. All right. I struggled with rejection for a while. Yeah. I was raised by my grandmother, but my father existed. All right, and he was alive. He's still alive up to now. And so when I had children myself, every single money I got, I spent it on them. Yeah. All right, I could do everything for them. Take them to the schools that I still think are really good. But then along the way, I looked into it and I realized I was parenting both my children and myself at that particular moment. and there are things that I wasn't intentional about looking in. All right. So when I listen to you speak, Ben, and the things that you do for the young people, have you been able to self-reflect and realize, is there a bit of me that I'm trying to heal in doing all these things that I'm doing? When I listen to you just speak, I am looking in and I'm trying to figure out, are there wounds that you're trying to address that nobody else sees, that inspire the things that you've been struggling with as an individual? Because I think it's important for us to touch base. You know, when I have a mental health presentation, one of the things I say is that we are self-healers. But for us to be able to tap into our self-healing ability, we've got to self-reflect. Identify what are some of the things that are holding us back, you know, to be able to get to full throttle achievement that we might be in position to get into self-reflection and identifying beyond the grandiose consideration of all these things.
What you call self-reflection, can we pivot that a little bit and talk about self-awareness? Because the self-reflection in its own right doesn't exist in isolation. It needs to lead to self-awareness for you to be able to say, you know what, I have an anchor problem, okay? And then to be able to say, what do I do about that? For you to be able to say, I have a bad relationship with money. This is who I am, and I need to figure out how to deal with that. We'll start with David, and then we'll come across the table. The whole concept of self-awareness and how it affects our mental health. For you to be able to know that there are certain things that are very easy triggers for me. I am prone to addiction, right, as a man. Because there are certain, and again, I think Moses was speaking to this, there will be markers where you know that even genetically, if I find myself with a bottle, chances are I will want another one and another one and another one. And so I am prone to addiction. And I think sort of things that we'll probably talk about. But this whole concept of, are you aware of who you are, especially as a man?
Or as a human being? Yeah. Yeah, of course, we're focusing on men here. I'll take it a step further.
Yeah.
I look at the whole element of wellness, I'll talk about mental wellness, as having certain abilities that help you cope with an ever-changing world. That's my definition. And so I categorize them in three. Of course, I categorize them in three, but I'll say I got that category from another place. Number one is people's ability, cognitive abilities, thinking, decision-making, problem-solving. That's category A. What are you there and where, you know? Then the second category I look at is skills of living with yourself. Self-awareness, self-esteem. There's a category of skills of living with yourself, dealing with stress, dealing with stressors. That's a category. Then the third category, I'd say skills of dealing with others. So once I look at all those three, then the intersection is where I'd put the issue of mental wellness. So self-awareness is just one category. It's the category of skills of living with myself. I've got to know my history. Our parents, they used to drink a lot, so maybe the propensity of us to drink is going to be whatever. And because I do a lot with young people, they can't quite talk about track records. Of course, when you get older, you can look back and as they say, we get wise of the 2020 vision, you know, as they're looking back. So many people have just gone through and they've not asked what they do. Yeah. But sometimes I also feel to give the people the benefit of the doubt. Nobody talks about these things. So even this concept of self-awareness, a certain person will ask you, what is it? In local language, they said, okwezula. And that means to find oneself. Yes, but then is that really? Because in English, the concept of discovery is different from awareness. It's really different. But the local word in Luganda for self-awareness meant arrogance. Okwemanya. You know? And so now they approximated this thing with another word, and it just means okwezula. It means I'm lost. You know. So for me, I'm thinking that if we get these concepts and people know that, as I said, those three concepts, first of all, what's your problem solving? Critical thinking. You know, many people don't think. I called and he didn't pick. So what was the intention of the call? To get a message. So have you sent a text message? Are you going to call again? What structure do you have? So self-awareness is one of the, falls in one of the categories.
It's a big deficiency we have, especially the critical thinking. We're not teaching it enough in our schools here at all. We don't help our young people, our children, to do a lot of critical thinking. Joe, do you feel like you're self-aware? Do-
Yeah, I think I do now.
Are you comfortable enough with who you are, with yourself?
I have become comfortable with who I am now. It's taken me about 40 plus years to get comfortable with who I am. I was reading a quote, I think this morning, of you're trying to please everybody. You're trying to please everybody, and then all of a sudden you realize, as in pleasing everybody, you're causing yourself more grief, more stress. I have now gotten to a point of, you know what, I didn't want to use the word, but yes, I've gotten to the point of, you know, I'm just going to be me.
Yeah.
I'm going to be me. You're trying to send a text, and a WhatsApp, and you're wondering what will the other people interpret of what that text is.
Yeah.
Now that is giving me grief.
Yeah.
I'm at a podcast now.
Yeah.
I'm thinking again, men at a podcast talking about mental health. What are we doing up here talking about mental? We as men should be. Are we? Not are we mental? Are we men? We should be. we should. Yeah. We should be sorting our problems out there.
Self-healing, like
yeah,
Moses
self-healing.
said, right?
Yeah, self-healing.
Yeah.
But again, it's true. Yes, we have all these tools which we're using now allow me get into that and then get back into self-awareness. We have all these tools that we're using, and we are saying, are they making us better? Yeah. Are they making us better, or are they treating the symptom?
Yeah.
Because generally, I think what we're supposed to be doing is we are supposed to be self-healing, like Moses has said.
Yeah.
Somehow find a way to self-heal. There's always going to be stress.
Yeah.
So anyway, back to self-awareness. Yes, it has taken me this long, but I am happy now where I am in regards to I am self-aware. I know I have a problem with I don't want to call it OCD, but I like my things organized.
Oh, Joe has OCD. No. Joe has serious OCD.
Okay, we're not going to the clinical person. Yes.
If Joe's shirt is just slightly off of the belt and it's not center, there will be a problem.
Yeah, no, but I'm self-aware and I'm happy. Yeah, it's not. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So it's being lit. So Moses, this self-awareness thing, one of the hardest things I think for me about self-awareness was being able to look at this guy in the mirror and say to myself, I don't like you. Right? I don't like you. I don't like what you've done. I don't like who you've become. I don't like what's going on with you. I don't think I've ever gone through anything more difficult than that.
Oh yes, it is a difficult place to be in, but at the same time, as we say that you are speaking or talking about men who you will catch dozing and will say, am I sleeping? You get what I'm saying? Am I
Kwekaza.
Yes,
Yeah.
kwekaza.
Yeah.
But you see, this is something that you are doing yourself, and you're not even accepting that. We have gotten out of ourselves, all right? We do not live within ourselves most of the times. And when you spoke, John, earlier, you spoke into insight. One of the things that I do during therapy is assess personality. Now I know different people have done self-assessment personality, but I have a different clinical way of assessing for somebody's personality. When I do, I am able to identify these are your natural strengths, these are your natural weaknesses. All right? Now, once we are able to identify those, we are tapping into your blind spots. What I mean by blind spots is Ben walking on the street and your zip is down. You will continue to make a fool of yourself until somebody brings that to your attention. Then you can do something about the issue that you're having before you. But what are the chances that the men that we have are even going to allow another in? You know, for somebody to say, hey, I feel like there's something that you're struggling. Would you be comfortable talking about it? You know, we are going to close each other out most of the times. You know, so self-awareness doesn't even come through.
Where do you draw the balance between the need to speak about, you know, your issues of what you're dealing with and the self-healing? Because by default, if I'm not mistaken, and this argument has been made to me by a bunch of men, and I've found that I'm actually shifting my position on what it is. I used to think that you know, it's perfectly okay for you as a man to just be able to just go and blurt out everything that's happening in your life and to cry and all of those things. But then it has been impressed upon me that while there is a place to be able to do that in very particular instances, that what you mentioned about self-healing is also very important. And as a man, which I think I mentioned this before we came on air, about a place where I have been suicidal before in my life. And what got me out of it was not talking to another man. It was the self-healing where you say, hang on a minute, this is not who I am. This is what needs to happen. This is where I need to go. And then it was after that that I'm able to go and sit down with a bunch of guys and say, by the way, this is what's been happening in my life. So how do you draw that balance between being able to share what you're dealing with and still being able to have the steel and resolve as a man to, you know, get yourself together? David?
Maybe before David you come in, there's a politically correct response that I'm going to give to this.
Yeah.
Anybody here has driven a manual car?
There's always a manual car in my stable. So
All right. So now, at the beginning when you are starting, if any of you happen to have an instructor,
yeah,
what those guys will say, they don't say initiate the gear now.
right.
Usually it's along the statements of Ojaji Wuliro, Jaji Wuliange Evanja, you know, but they don't tell you here. You know, they do not tell you here, initiate here. All right. So some of these that we are speaking into, the line is too thin that you might not really be able to identify that here is where now I draw it. So there's a bit that is left to you as an individual coming from the insight that we are fighting so hard for you to get. Many people never get to where you got, you know, when you intercepted your progression into death by suicide, because at that point it was suicidal ideations. Many people never get to recognizing that, and you did that. We don't take that for granted. And also, I want to take this opportunity to appreciate you for allowing yourself to be vulnerable enough to speak into this, because there are so many men that are part of this that are struggling and well on their way to that.
I do get to meet men every once in a while who reach out and say, you know what, can I have a chat? And I usually will make sure I actually make time to listen. And I tell them that, you know, once you've been able to accept your circumstances and where you are and make peace with that, you find that it's very difficult for things to then phase you. I told a friend of mine recently, because I've been through this experience myself, and as I come to David, where I say, because of the issues that I'm having with money, for example, I'm not able to pay school fees. Okay? Now, as a man, you know, again, you talked about this with your children, right? So you find yourself in a position where Nate has to go to school, Zoe has to go to school, and the fees is not there. And you're doing the math and it's not mathing, right? And the amount of stress that puts on you, the toll it takes on your mental health, can be so severe that for me, the solution became very simple. I always go to worst case scenario, right? And worst case scenario in this case is, there is a very distinct possibility that these kids are going to sit at home for 6 months. So you're going to miss 6 months of school. Heck, maybe even a year. Okay? It's a possibility. People are going through it. Not by choice. No, but I can't borrow. I have nowhere to borrow from. Right? Yeah, pretty much. And so here's the thing. Again, one, you might not have anywhere to borrow from, but also it might be in a place where you have tried to borrow. And it's one of the things that causes even more mental stress, where you go to Joe saying, Joe, I don't have school fees. Joe drives a very nice E-Class. I expect that if I ask him to give me 5 million shillings, he will have it somewhere. And you don't know that Joe actually does not have it. Because in particular for Joe's case, for example, I know the stuff he's been dealing with. I know that, right?
But taking that into context and getting back to your question, I think I'm somebody who's a stickler for words. When I hear something like self-healing, it is saying something is wrong. I was in the HIV/AIDS arena, and we talk about things like behavior change. That was wrong, because for some people it's behavior formation. All right, form the behavior before you get into a problem. Now, because also we're talking to men, there are words that I would not use when I'm talking to men. I don't use counseling because of men's hierarchical structure, and they feel that because I'm under this person, it means counseling means you need help. Conversation means let's explore, let's talk. So I would not use self-healing. All right, because and that's why earlier on I differentiated between mental health and mental wellness. I'm looking at mental wellness as having an engine that can help you, that is perpetually delivering results to help you adjust, scan the changing environment, and develop the appropriate responses. So what I hear you say, when instead of self-healing, I'd say it's problem solving. Problem solving. Because a problem is going to come. Nobody's promised you a smooth life. Have your problem solving skills. And we know, once I call it that, I know how to help you. I know which activities to develop to help you in your problem solving. Then the other one would be creative thinking. And creative thinking is the one of think about options. All right? Because once I call it, and that's why for me words are very important, the name I call it is going to determine whether I can help you or not. When I say self-healing, to me, I've given a concept which is vague to somebody out there. What does that mean? And you know what locally they say? Physician cannot, that phrase, physician heal thyself. All right? But also, we have different horsepower. The man downtown in South Yako, his horsepower for sudden resilience is going to be, I told you, put the water in the bathroom. What you call it? Fluma. All right? The middle class guys, they are telling me, man, the woman doesn't take my water there. How do I handle? Yeah. And then you're saying, and of course, everything has its own context and stuff like that. So right. So healing, I would swap it.
Yeah, Joe,
for the man out there.
Joe, as Joe comes in, if you're following us online, we would like to hear from you. Because this conversation is not just about, academics and English. We want to have a real conversation. So if there's stuff that you're dealing with, and maybe you've not even had a chance to share, maybe you want to get in touch, you can go to the chat section. If you have a question to ask, please do ask that. If you want to share your experience, please do share that. We definitely want to hear from you. And as we hear from Joe, I want to paint a scenario for you guys, one that is very common to a lot of people. We've currently had restructuring happening in a lot of MDAs, right? What did they call it? Rationalization. You had already made out your plan, your life was in order and everything. Now, rationalization has happened. You are 46, 47. Getting another job is not going to be easy. Kids need to go to school. You haven't had a good relationship with money. So you're in a place where all of a sudden, things have become tricky, right? This English you're talking, Mr. Kabiswa.
No. I have both English and Luganda.
Wait. I'm going to come back to you, right?
Yes.
After Joe.
Yes.
I'm saying, I want you to go from the English. You talk about problem solving.
Yes.
So this individual, right? Let's call him Ambrose.
Yes.
Who is in this situation now.
Yes.
Where the wife is now telling him,
yes.
What kind of man are you?
Yes.
What did I marry? Look at your children. They're here. They can't go to school. What?
Yeah.
What?
But Ben, I went through a scenario.
Before you
for
do
8 months. Wait, just to let you know.
Right.
Because I think the way we frame it is always very important. And for me, it kept me in that scenario. 8 months of zero. And the woman did not say what I'm supposed to do. So when we paint some of these scenarios, I think sometimes we equip the women folk to have that bad language. If you're married and things are not happening, why in your proper sense should that even question come up that the man is supposed to do?
But they are doing this.
Now, that's where they need education. And let's use this forum to tell them what not to say.
And so for me, what I want you to talk to that man who is unfortunate to be in a position where the
woman is
wife
saying,
he has is telling Tomarako.
Yeah.
Right? Joe.
Thank you, Ben. David was here drawing pie charts. There's a reason they invited him as a leadership
English
speaker. I have a clinical psychologist, on my right, Moses. And these guys are speaking science.
Right.
And I like what you're asking because David here is talking about problem solving, creative thinking. Yeah. You're not going to creative think when your responsibilities are overweighing you. It's just going to be David, there have been days I cannot get out of my house. days.
Can't get out of bed.
I can't get out of bed.
Yeah.
By the way, let me tell you, the other thing that would possibly get me out of bed is the routine, because the children need to go to school. Imagine they were in boarding school. I would never be able to get out of bed at some point. I'm not saying every time, but at some point I would not be able to. But I can't.
Joe, and there are men on this call, there are men on this webinar right now who are in that exact situation right now, where getting out of bed is a burden on a daily basis, where problem solving, right? At the moment, they are not able to do any creative thinking because a friend of mine, we have this saying that I have porridge in the head, right? Every man at some point has had porridge in the head, and we took it a step further and we said sometimes that porridge turns into posho, where it solidifies, and you literally, it's like someone has just taken a block of posho, and the way Moses there is looking at us, it sounds like we have another Moses here. Yeah, not this Moses. The way Moses is looking at us, it feels like he probably has actually been through this, where you're actually thinking, but why do I have to do anything to get out of bed today, right?
Yeah. So I've had scenarios like that. The only thing that will keep me going, maybe one, is an invitation, a safe space. Okay, I don't want to call it safe space because that's what we call it these days. I have a safe space. No, I now have boys I can go to and say, I am suffering from this cafe. And I know that you mentioned that where do we go to say this thing? Where do men go? But I am lucky to have now found a space where I can go and say,
John,
you know
you're
what?
speaking into intentional communities of men
Of
that we
men.
do not have. And the ones that we have, and I would like you to speak more about that, because let the men on call know, where can I go to? You know, where can I talk freely and open up. So I would like you to say that out.
All right. So let me. I think for me, what happened was it started by I would have a Zoom call with a friend of mine who lives in Nairobi. He's moved from here and he's gone to Nairobi, and would sit and I would still, I would say I am. This week has been tough. Yeah. But again, it was our 1 hour once a week to go and do. But then again, and I if you're on call, by the way, I may not completely open up into because he doesn't know exactly what is happening with me. And I think we talked about this. The women, he doesn't need to, but you just want to. So you'll give him some things and be vulnerable, but not vulnerable enough to tell him everything. And then eventually I call up a man called Ben. And like he mentioned, a couple of years we used to do life together, we used to pray together, we sit together, families are together. I don't know what happened, but he then disappeared from me.
Adulting.
Yeah? He then disappeared. Yeah, he then disappeared.
He was struggling to get out of bed.
Then I kept calling.
Also, Ben was struggling to get out of bed around that
and I
time.
didn't check on him. I didn't
And he
check
didn't
to see.
open up to
No,
you
he didn't say
either.
anything to me.
And there's so many men on call now.
And by the way, even if he had said something to me, I possibly would not have had the time, because also life is just generally too busy. It is too busy. At what point am I now going to look for Ben and get that done? But luckily enough, a couple of weeks ago, I called, I said, Ben, surely we used to do life together. What happened? I think it took him like 2 weeks. Then he called me and said, you know what? I have a meeting with some boys of mine, but you can come and we meet before that meeting. So generally, then I asked him, so we met for that 1 hour, then his boys started to join in. And I know all the boys. I know all the boys. Yeah, coincidentally, I know all the boys. Yeah. You've either worked with them, you've done professional work with them, you've gone to school with them, you have socialized in other places. I told guys, really, you've had this space for approximately maybe about 10 to 20 years, and they would go there and leave me, and you have never called me to say that you can actually come here. And you see, the portion he was talking about, or the porridge he's talking about, is that when you are stuck, David, you really are stuck. And the weight of the responsibilities is just quite a lot. And you're dealing with so much. You're dealing with school fees. You're dealing with wife. You're dealing with children. You're dealing with employees. You're dealing with boards that want report. You're dealing with Rotary that wants things. And by the way, at a certain point, you're overwhelmed and you can't think anymore. Yeah. Now, what you need is that person who you can just say, you know what, guys, And then there's a solution. I went through this. But again, allow me just to finish this. Is it the way we need to go as men? As a guy, should I be the one to tell you or a couple of boys?
So I actually wanted to come into us to sort of talk about that in terms of the aspect of community and why that's important, right? And I can start by sharing about this thing that Joy is talking about. So there's a bunch of guys. We grew up together, went to school together. They're called the Breakfast Boys, right? Most of them are big boys in town now. And we discovered about, I think it's going on maybe 7-8 years ago, that we had completely grown apart. We didn't know who is doing what. Again, like Joe said, adulting has happened. Until we then said, this is absolute nonsense, it must stop. And so what we then... Yeah, exactly. Look in the mirror and say we don't like what we see. And so we said, going forward, what's going to happen is that we are going to create an altar, right? And that altar sits every Saturday. Okay? So every Saturday, there's maybe 25, almost 30 people in this group, right? And the idea is that any given Saturday, and so because Joe is now, spending a lot of time with us, he's one of the boys, there will never be less than maybe between 8 and 14 of the men on any given Saturday. And those 8 to 14 will be different every Saturday. But the idea is that if on a given Saturday between 4 p.m. and maybe 10, 11 p.m., you come to the place where we meet, you can be guaranteed there will be at least 8 people. Our wives know this. They understand that on Saturday, in fact, you had better not to do anything for us on a Saturday. It is a sacred time. And what happened with it was this, that you, in many cases, will talk about very random things. Teaching people in Nyankole investments, solving the Ukraine problems, what to do, run football. But every once in a while, you then actually go deep, you have a conversation, you say, you know what, guys, by the way, I'm struggling. my work is a big challenge, or I'm having issues at home, my marriage is falling apart, or I am in a very tight spot. If I don't find, 3 million shillings by tomorrow, I might go to prison. And somehow this thing evolves in a manner that you actually have community, that it's intentional, but it's not we are being like women saying, and he did what, and he did what, and then and what. So you're not under pressure to try and talk about what you're going through, but just being there to eat a slice of pizza, drink a cup of tea, and then just hang, laugh, to reminisce.
Ben, I need to speak into that here now.
Yeah.
So I've been for panels, I've been for conferences, and I've really been felt like they've made me feel like the mental health expert. I'm seated here with you, and I'm telling you, I have not shared any of what I had planned to come and speak here, because all of you here have allowed me to be authentic. And I'm enjoying that. All right? But how often do we have these, like you're speaking right now? How often do we have these where you can speak your heart and not really have several masks, put on you, like professional mask? I don't have that one on. Yeah. What you see is me.
The master was left at the door.
Kind of. I came with it, but you helped me drop it while I am here.
Yeah.
And that's a small, tiny thing that speaks humongously into how good I feel now in the moment. And this is energy for me, even when I leave this place. And I don't know how much longer we have, but I would love this to continue. Certainly it can't.
No, something about community.
Yeah, because I want to ask you because, again, we can't belabor, the fact enough that you have been around longer than the rest of us.
All right.
So, what has community looked like for you, and how important does it become, especially as you begin to grow older? And what does it look like? Yeah, for a man, what does good community look like when you cross the 5th floor?
Talking about community, I'm going to start on the fact that it depends on what kind of man that you are. All right. If you're a man in the market, they have their community when they're doing things like lunch. If you're a non-Christian man, or let me say, they have it almost every evening in the bars. In fact, what I find that the people who struggle to get to community are the Christian men, because in the desire of being a good Christian man, they go home and they're there by 5:36. So they are actually what some people outside there even call feminized men. All right. So even when you get into, they're not, feminized. They're not necessarily playing soccer. They're nice. And you see the irony, and which also can become a cause of stress. The irony of this is that women like nice guys. They get the nice guys, then they don't respect the nice guys. All right?
This is true.
A very dangerous,
Preacher,
a very dangerous particular thing. And so when you talk about community, me what I'd emphasize is get a community where guys can just be boys.
Yeah.
Talk about anything. Let's go soccer. Let's take a walk and stuff like that. I know a group of Rotarians, and they walk. Okay, they go to somebody's house and walk. Now that's why I said depends on which community.
David,
you're looking for.
don't those things take us away from
The wives?
family as well? All these grandiose things that you're speaking
but
into.
you see, when we talk of mental health and wellness, you need it.
You need it.
Strike a balance.
Yeah,
Yes,
but,
of course.
But,
Yes.
but my brother, I think that's where we lose it.
Yeah.
Because in many times when we're striking the balance, we're actually moving towards the feminine side. Wait, no, you hear me out. Hear me out. I'll hear you
Joe,
out. And this is what I mean.
Please get your popcorn.
No. Science. This is what I mean. There's a way women see family. There's women see family. So who sets the balance? The head of the home or the nurturer? Okay? And then the nurturer wants you there. Like one time I was talking to someone, I told guys go play soccer. And the first thing, it was a group, and then the first thing the woman said, but our men are not going to be available at home. That was that first instinct. I said, once a week? Should that become an issue? But do you know how many, also, if you talk about stressors, many stressors it's the wives. They don't intend to be, but they've become the stressors.
Sorry, I've got to point out.
People,
what
if
you
there are
just said
women,
there.
This
if
is
there are
age
women on
speaking.
You
here,
know what
Take it
David,
wrong.
wisdom speaking. What David just
age.
said,
Yeah.
they don't intend to be, okay? But somehow, because of the dynamics of what's happening, you find yourself in a position where that pressure is sort of coming on board, and it ends up becoming a problem. These boys are.
so you're running. Are you running?
No, you're not running.
Because this is running. When David puts it that way,
Is it?
then we
I
are
don't-
running away from this. But you see, let me share this, Ben. Mother's Day is today, and it's being celebrated. Do you know when Father's Day is? And it might go past without you noticing. There's nothing for us to be celebrated about because we are always away. So when the children grow, there's nothing to celebrate about us because we misunderstood what providing means. Providing, get money and not be part of the experiences of shopping with the kids because it's nurturing and it should be taken on by women. But you see now, when you speak like a speaking David, you are normalizing us being away and not being part of these experiences that are important for us to be a part of.
I
as
think
men.
I think to defend David, just to come in here, maybe Mr. Mpanga might have misunderstood because I think I heard what you're saying. We're not saying be in the bar every day. We're saying have a place where you can be able to go and be with a bunch of men just to distress and offload. I'll tell you, these boys that I've been talking about, for example, one of the things that we said we were going to do, apart from just being able to link up every Saturday, once every year, we have something we call an AGM,
Oh wow, this is
Right?
really serious.
where we go, spend a long weekend, and it usually happens actually this coming weekend, June, usually Martyrs Day or Heroes Day, because normally you have a bit of an extra day or two. And so every year, for the last, I think we've done 5 now so far, we plan for it in advance. We know we get visas. We have to get visas from relevant authorities.
The men, David, you talked about, the
eh.
category, the type of men.
You have to get visas from work, from home, and then you're going to be at this AGM. And I think what David is saying is that being able to be away for that weekend, not worrying about the kids, and we'll talk about fatherhood and kids as well, and why important that is. Not worried about your wife, not worried about the business, not worried about anything. You're just with a band of brothers, cracking silly jokes, eating some food, drinking some good drinks. I find that for me, it always adds life. One of the things that happened, and I'll have to be sensitive about how I share this, is that last year,
our AGM, when we had just arrived at our destination for our AGM, one of the boys lost his brother. Okay? We had just arrived like this. And so we had a dilemma. This is one of the best friends we have. And, you know, the consensus was we need to head back to Kampala immediately. We're so far away, right? And then he said, guys, listen, the reason we come to do this stuff is so that you want to make sure that you are mentally okay. I know that you have my back. Stay. So he had to leave, obviously. We sent one of the boys, you know, with him to come. And two of the other boys who had not been able to make it for the AGM were able to come and be with the family. And then when we came back a week or two later, we then were able to go and actually commiserate with him and the family and the mom and spend time with them. And I think that made a lot of sense for them. But the key thing here being that that thing is held in such high esteem that for a man to be able to find that space with a bunch of guys that you know, that's your community, I don't think you can find a...
And just to add, and I guess just to add to what David was, and just what David was saying, for me that is community. Now I have other community. I have church, but it's yes, I have church, but then that is I have church, but that's a different community, and there's Rotary, that's a different community. But then I'm not vulnerable with those people in the way that I am vulnerable with these people. Yeah, the 10, 15, or 20 people that I have, and that for me feels like that is a lot better. But yes, I'm in the community there, and you see what we have done in those spaces as well is that we project the best of ourselves. Whether we project the best of ourselves, as in there's nothing wrong with me. Look, this is me. Yes.
You just give me the perfect intervention point for this, because we actually have a question online that speaks into that I wanted to come into, and I'll introduce it this way. I hate LinkedIn. Every time I go on LinkedIn, I feel inadequate. Moses Mpanga, I am honored today to have been able to share a stage with Professor so and so. That thing depresses me. You look at it, I'm thinking, but wait, what am I doing with my life? You get, eh? At somebody I said, you know what? No. I will keep the account. I am not going there because I can't keep thinking about myself this way, right? And the point being this, the segue into the question that someone has asked here, and they say that some of us men are on such high horses. We are proud. We seem confident. We think we know everything. Right? Inside, you're dying like an officer. You're dealing with things. You went and you wanted to make sure that you are keeping up with the status. You bought a Volkswagen Touareg. Now maintenance for it is becoming a problem. But you can't then sell it and go back to a RAV4 because how will they see me, right?
Yeah.
And so that issue of, and you talked about balance, right? Can we talk a little bit about how that affects our mental health? The need to put on a show. How does that affect men? The need to, in many cases, I think, live beyond our means, where you live in denial and fail to understand that, look, the level at which you are in your life does not allow for you to drive a Penconi. You have it, but the truth of the matter is that it's causing you more stress than giving you any joy or fulfillment. That you've insisted on trying to go and build a 600 million shilling house, which in honest reality, you can't afford yet. Okay? And I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I'm not saying you can push yourself, but at what cost does that come to you, to your family, and to your mental health? How do you, again, we start with the oldest man in the room. He has dealt with this both on his own side and through relationship. Where does a man begin to be able to have an honest conversation with himself to say, I am trying to live at a level at which I don't belong to yet?
A lot of things kind of run through my mind, from English to the local examples. All right, I like giving diagrams and stuff like that, so that when people leave, they can sort out something. But the risk of that is that people think that you've not gone through it. All right. I was an executive director somewhere, and because I was doing business online and this forex trading, I said, I got this. It was giving 20%. I said, these opportunities are there and people don't know them. So I did that.
You paid school fees.
I paid school fees. I went down. So
Didn't
for
we
a
all?
solid 8 months, I was down. It's interesting that in that solid 8 months, I understood the meaning of the Lord's Prayer, which says, give us this day our daily bread. I needed it. That was one.
Yeah.
The other thing was the aspect that actually God can multiply food in your stomach. He actually can. I went through that. And I remember one time sharing.
Wait. Mr. Kawiswa, please,
Yes.
you must understand
Yes.
that when you do podcasts like this,
Yes.
there are certain moments that you have to pause for,
Yes.
look into the camera,
Yes.
and,
You mean?
and say a quotable quote.
A quotable quote.
God does what?
God can multiply food in your stomach. That's one I know. All right. When you've got
Can multiply food in your stomach.
Yeah. You've taken your breakfast, a slice of bread, and you come back at 10 p.m. and you're still okay. All right. So those sorts of things have been there. Now there's one place which was my savior. It was in Namuongo, and I used to go there when I could afford, and lunch was 3K. And I'd go there, but because of the status I'd been in,
Yeah.
self-judgment from the internal
Executive
voice.
director.
Yes.
How do you go
know,
to a car?
you walk in thinking that those guys know that you're executive director, but you're in this kafunda. So self-judgment.
Yeah.
You walk looking down, and I just, you scan where the table is. You go to that table, and you're eating your food focused on the food only, not even bold enough to look up. After a couple of months, I said, and by then you couldn't afford to do it every day.
And you can do
It was 3K. When a buffet in town was 15K, it was 3K. You can't afford the 3K. And then at time I said, but who else comes here? Looked around. I saw a police officer there. I said, these are the people. That was the bottom.
Yeah.
But I learned that there's life at the bottom.
Oh, there is a life.
Now most people think that when things are collapsing, and that's the reason they live up in appearances. They think that if I go down, this is the corporate lie, that there's no life down there. I hit the bottom, boom. And then after some time, of course, you see the stars, then you shine the eye, and then suddenly in the darkness, I could see people. Men are competitive. And it is largely the testosterone gland and those sorts of things. We need to know. And so you've got an internal voice, and you're telling yourself, I must be better. You're competing. Even if you look at the scriptures in places like Ecclesiastes, they say men's motivation is competition.
Yeah.
Now, in the process, they're competing in a race that nobody has set except themselves. They've heard that Touareg is the car.
Yeah.
If I get it, people, who is watching?
Yeah.
There's a statement, you buy things you don't need to impress people you don't like.
Yeah.
All right?
Yeah.
Now, that's where people
With money
need
you
to-
don't have.
With money you don't have, but you can borrow,
Yeah.
those sorts of things. So that's why we need to tell people, kakana. But how do you set that standard? Because in school, he behaved, grab and stuff like that. It's a lifestyle issue that sometimes we need to tell people to realize. One, that there's life after zero. Most people don't know that there's life after zero, and that's why they keep on living appearances. And then when they can't make it, they get into issues of depression. So for me, I tell the men out there that, by the way, sadly, some people have to knock the wall, and I'm not going to be apologetic about that one.
Yeah.
Some of you, and this attempt looking in the camera, right?
Yeah.
Some of you will have to hit the wall because that's the only way you're going to learn. But when you hit the wall, the encouragement to you is this: you will realize that there's life after that.
Yeah.
You can go and get
need
support.
to add something, David.
I need to add.
Sometimes you will hit the ground.
Yeah,
The ground. Do you know how they say that you hit rock bottom?
yeah,
There's a level. You hit rock bottom.
yeah.
And you start digging.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's
You can hit rock bottom.
so. That rock was
and still find a way to
was,
dig through that rock.
Okay.
But can't I learn from from David's walls that he has hit rather than my own?
No,
That's the point, isn't it?
That's what wisdom demands.
Wisdom would
But many
suggest-
men don't have this speaking fora.
Yeah.
Like, why women help each other? They talk. But men don't have this speaking fora. And it's easy for us even as men to come and get the banter. We talk, and not go deep.
Allow me to tell you a story.
But that's-
let me
you're-
tell you
you're
a
a
very
different
quick
kind of
story.
man.
Tell you a very quick story. So I keep saying to people that I have enough debt to fund a small district, right? Debt to fund a small district. How I got there is mostly because of what David has just said. Where when you share this experience with people eventually because you have no choice, right? Then you see people just drop their faces and say, Ben, you stupid idiot. If you had said this at some point, would have been able to fix it, because you go from a point where you have this debt, and to manage it, because you're trying to keep up appearances, you then have to try and see, how do I borrow from here to cover this? But then how do I now to do that? And then the interest is growing. Now you're covering interest. At some point, the interest has grown so big that whatever money you find is only enough to pay interest.
Yeah. And not even complete the
Which
interest.
you could have stopped if you had been
yeah,
wise enough to
yeah,
just
yeah.
be able to talk to someone and say, guys, this is
Yeah.
what I'm dealing with.
Yeah.
Right? So eventually one of our friends finds themselves in a very similar situation where they've, made some bad decisions. Hi, David, Forex trading. Hello. And then they start, they hit the bottom and then they start digging. But because they had my story somewhere, they called me and said, Ben, I've got an issue. I don't know what to do with it. So I said, and I say, my guy, I see where you're going and it's not good. Okay? I explained my story, what happened. And the long story short, we're able to be in a place where this person is able to accept his circumstances and be able to go before the places where he has obligations and say, the reality of my situation is that this is where I am. Can we work from here? He never, we caught him just, as he was beginning to fall off the cliff. And in 2 years' time, up and running all over the place, guy owes me his life. Right? And I'm not saying that in a bad way. I'm just saying that wisdom that David is talking about, yes, of just being able to know that the stuff that you're dealing with as a man, chances are Joe has gone through it, Moses has gone through it, David has definitely gone through it. Statistically speaking. Exactly, yes.
David, this is personal now.
No,
But I think
he
also
takes
what
it,
you're
yeah.
saying, over and above, what you're saying is that talk.
Talk. Find someone to talk to. You must be sensitive who you talk to, because in some cases, you might come and talk to Joe, and one, he's not able to help you, but also he's not really useful. And then it makes you even feel worse as a man when you share your problem and there's no solution for it and there's nothing that can be done
There's
for
no
it.
solution for it. There's no solution for it at that moment.
Yeah.
But also, he possibly is going to tell somebody else whom you did not think. And
Who shouldn't know?
Who should not know?
Yeah.
The one thing I think as men is that we always want to tell somebody. Not that because sometimes you just want to get the once you've talked to somebody, it's a problem shared. Yeah?
Yes.
Great. It's a problem shared.
halved.
And halved.
Yeah.
It's half.
Yeah.
Not that person should have a solution, but somebody should listen to what you're going through. The question is that a safe space for you? Is that person going to be able to keep that thing for you? Now, here's the other thing. I think that as adults, or even me as personally, is that the new thing that has become is avoidance.
Yeah.
We used to fear things.
Yeah.
Now, we avoid things. I owe money. I am going to avoid that phone call for the longest time possible.
God, that was one of the stupidest things I ever did.
I am going to avoid that phone call for the longest time possible. And now that problem keeps amplifying and becomes stressful.
And as it does, it's sitting on your head even
Correct.
bigger and
Every
bigger and
day,
bigger and
every
bigger.
morning.
Thank
But
you.
sometimes it makes you
Yeah.
stronger. Sometimes it makes you stronger.
David.
I am telling you. When I went through that thing of mine,
Yeah.
I had an obligation with a bank in this city.
Hiya, boss.
And every time I see that number, you know how the bodies work. It sees the number,
Yeah.
it triggers certain things in your system, and you start feeling whatever. Sometimes you're avoiding the number. Till one time I said, what can happen if I pick up this?
Thank you. But that's what we're saying, right?
No,
Yeah.
so I became bold. I said, you want the thing? I'm as concerned about it as you, so I can't make it. You see?
But
Because
you
I
see,
come
when you
from
do
the
that, David,
corporate
you're
the
not
corporate
minting
lifestyle.
out ways to deal with this. All you're doing is running.
No. You see,
No,
let me
but
tell
you see,
no.
he said he came around. But when
Moses.
he came around, he said, I am as concerned as you are. So what's the solution?
No, now, Ben, that's why I go back to definitions. I distinguish mental health from mental wellness. For me, it was a point of building resilience. The avoiding of the call was running away. The picking up the call for me was a journey, a turnaround, and said, I've got to deal with it. The other side, the other person is also a human being. I said, okay, I can't make it this one. And, if you're going to a financial card, I said, I understand, thank you. They told me all those sorts of things, all right? But I was committed to paying. but it developed a certain muscle. And also, when you're talking to men, there's a muscle you must develop. Resilience is the ability to bounce back. He has talked about it, that when he talked to Ben after those, Ben linked him to that group, the ability to bounce back. Don't run, but it might be a natural response that you first run. All right, flight is a natural response,
Right.
but you've got to deal with it because you can't run for forever. Right?
Allow me, Ben, add into this thing. Sometimes you
I
have
want
to
to
hit.
take some questions. We
Yeah.
have some questions.
All
that
right.
you guys
Sometimes
need to
you
deal
have
with.
to hit rock bottom.
Yeah.
To realize that there's only now one other way up.
Unless you start digging.
Unless you start, there's start digging or not dig.
Yeah.
But then there's a point where that rock bottom now has a crack.
Yeah.
Then it opens even further
Further.
because there is a hole. And you're like, you know what? I need to start from scratch.
Yeah.
I have to start from scratch.
Yeah.
And if you're able to do that,
Yeah.
then that means you've been able to build your stress
And-
and resilience
Yeah.
into
I wouldn't
this
want
thing.
men to know. I wouldn't want men on the call to know that you have to
Okay.
hit.
You don't need to.
You don't need to.
Right? And that's why we're doing this conversation. To say to you that whatever it is that you're dealing with, there is no need for you to get worse. You can be able to deal with where you are right now and begin to get better immediately, right? And I think that's the thing that needs to come out very, very, very critically. I want you guys to talk about one thing, and then we'll answer a bunch of questions, which I think are really brilliant questions on the call. And if you do have some questions, please do share. This recording will be available after this. We'll make sure that the link is available. I know that there's a bunch of men who will want to hear this, and you can be able to share that with them. But before we get into the questions that are coming out online, I wanted to ask, right? We have a lot of businesses and workplaces, creation architects and Next Media and whatever, who have a lot of men who are dealing with things. I recently had an opportunity to work with a bunch of men in a bank, and we're talking about all these things. And one of the things that you realize, especially, is corporate slaves, as I like to call ourselves, right? As people who are in corporate enslavement. This whole, I am okay, I am all right, and then you're dying, productivity is dying. If you're to give advice to a business owner, a CEO, an executive director, for things that they can do to better support, especially their male employees' mental health, what would you advise them to do? Maybe Moses, you want to deal with that since you're an expert in this, and then we'll jump into the questions.
There's a meme that has been making rounds which says that your employer or your boss has more impact on your mental health than your doctor. All right? And I think it is very important for employers to identify what is below the iceberg. There is an employee that is not productive but has been productive earlier. Can we look at the ones that we did talk about at the beginning? Because they're the ones that are inspiring this. All right? Now, being able to be personal, with these people helps you tap into what is holding them back. Say, for instance, if I held your shoe down here and you're trying to raise your leg, until you let go of my hand, you will continue to be held back. So can we identify what are some of the things that are holding our people back? Can we be human? Even when we're asking for targets, even when we're asking for numbers. Now, I know that banks, for instance, you have systems. Those systems, you have targets, you have numbers that you need to be able to, tap into. There is somebody who is not going to put a human face on the work that is being done, especially accounts. Accounts are not going to put, right now there's so much money that I need to be paid, but accounts is holding it because of a few things here and there. But if accounts is able to put a human face and realize, okay, it's been 4 months, can I clear 1 month and 2 months instead of holding all of it? So it would take them having a human face to this, regardless of the policies, because they can be, thought through, and you're able to help the individual that you're working with or an employer that you have.
And it's also important, if you're here and you happen to run a business, please be interested in the well-being of your people. Sometimes they're dealing with things that it can be a thing of telling a person, you know what, take 2 weeks off, right? And in Uganda in particular, we have a very bad culture at the moment of the way we safeguard men's mental health. Let's come to a bunch of questions. So I'll ask you guys to just try and deal with them on a one-by-one basis, so we can try and go through all of them. But thanks a lot for the comments coming through. Angela Nsimbi, it's always good to hear from you. Angela has been very passionate about mental health for quite a while. It's good to know you're on the call with us. And she says it's important about talking about the power of community, because community helps people, and we need to be able to have a lot more men speaking. That's true. Lawrence Namale, also always good to hear from you. Hope you're well. And Lawrence says it's about being intentional. And he says that a man cannot be with his family 24/7. This is what David was saying, right? They are not hermits. Yes, a man is part of a community, even a leader in a community, and a part of his friends and workmates, and therefore it has to be intentional to be away in a man cave. Liverpool for me, and sometimes you go and do that. While I respond to this, please, for all three of you, make a mental note to talk about what we do with the next generation and how you deal with children. Yeah, Joy. I've just realized that we need to talk about that because it's very, very important. Someone here is saying, is it correct? This is now the first deep question that you guys need to deal with, and it's a very big one. David, you'll take lead. Is it correct to term one of the causes of stress for men as being the wives? Isn't that a double standard, because it is these same wives that are the ones that are holding the home together as your partners? Discuss,
and I'll discuss. I'm not surprised that comment came up.
Yeah.
Because I'll tell you, the way the society is structured, it's always a fight. All right? For example, because I look at it as a male engine and a female engine, I look at it in terms of diesel and petrol. And I did say it clearly that they did not intend to. All right? But because we are different in makeup, for example, they say a man's testosterone levels are high in the morning, they're down in the evening. So if he got home, and as soon as he gets home, the person wants to engage him meaningfully, you are causing stress. Did you intend to do that? No, it's lack of knowledge. Now, I know women who, because they know that kind of fact, they know when a guy comes home, they protect 30 minutes. They keep him, give him his space, and keep the children away. All right? So, but you notice that question? It was going into battle. Is it correct to say this when the person keeps... Please don't combine issues. Don't combine issues. The stress is not because the other person doesn't keep you home. The stress is that how this person copes and recharges is what we're looking at. Does he do those other things? Yes, it does.
Yeah. One of the things that I find interesting about women is that because of how different we are, it's very difficult for a woman to understand the psyche of a man and how he works, and the psychologists, I guess, will speak into this. But I found that, for example, many times, right? If I'm dealing with something and it's heavy, if the porridge has become partial, okay? If the porridge has become partial, one of the things that then becomes a big problem is that I might not be in a position where I really want to just talk about this, because talking about it for me opens up the gravity of my situation and my helplessness. And I understand that for the woman, you want to be helpful. And I appreciate that you're trying to be supportive. You want to be helpful, and you're asking, all these things. And for you, you're trying to live life like it's normal. Right? This has been my biggest challenge. That for you, you're trying to see life as being normal, and you feel that that's your way of being supportive, right? For the man is thinking, listen, I've got this mountain in front of me. I am currently unable to see beyond it. So please be advised that until I deal with it decisively, it's difficult for me to be a normal human being. Which is why things like Aqua Wellness Spa becomes important. Let me tell you what. I don't think, Joe, you come to spas, so you understand this. I don't think people understand what a difference it makes just to be able to put your phone away for 90 minutes and just have someone just release your muscles and smell some good things and have hot stones rubbing your back. If you haven't had that experience, I strongly suggest that you find some time and find some money and do that. It's
not only
life-changing.
time,
Ben,
but the money.
If you
Every
start
month.
talking about the sweet smells, people get it wrong.
No,
It is relieving the tension
Relieving
in
the
the
tension.
muscles.
For me, it's aromatherapy.
Yeah.
I do the whole...
Yeah. The tension in the
other
muscles.
the other is the
That's the
mental
key
health.
thing.
Does it
Yes.
go?
Yeah,
does it go because
Yeah.
they have released the tension in
No,
the muscles?
it helps.
You know, Ben,
It
allow
does,
me here just to get, to get just a little bit scientific here.
Yeah.
Just a little bit. When we started, we say that we are self-healers. We are self-healers because we have whatever it takes within us to heal ourselves. But then those must be triggered.
Yeah.
One of the ways those can be triggered is through exercise. The other is through spa. Because say for instance, you have the feel-good hormones, which are the dopamine. Most of you could have had this, but we have endorphins. Now, endorphin is a hormone that still can be released within you that is a pain-relieving hormone within itself. Coming to the spa or being able to, take those sessions in, you're triggering the brain and you're telling it, hey, release for me the other. And it's released and you're able to feel good, something that you've been inhibiting within you, and now your brain has been conducted to, take care of you in that given moment.
Moses, allow me, and I know we're speaking about wives because I want to come back to this thing, but a spa moment is going to cost you 150,000. 200,000. Yeah, for the really good ones, like the ones here where we are, the really good ones. On the amount of responsibilities that you have for that weekend. How much? No, again, you're trying to invest in yourself, but as soon as you leave the spa, 2 hours later, a session is 2 hours, right? As soon as you leave the spa, over Dewa, and then there is Mabugo, which you need to pay, which is coming up as well. The thing is that there's just so many problems, so many responsibilities.
Allow me, Joe, to educate you guys on something, because I've been through this, right? One of the things that I learned with all the things that I have dealt with, and I thank my wife for this, because she's the one who helped me see this. Just because you have all of these problems doesn't mean that life has ended. I'll repeat that for you. Just because you're going through cow dung, for lack of a better word, doesn't mean that your life has ended. I amended that a little bit to add something else to say. Under no circumstances should you allow to look like your problems. Don't allow to look like your problems. Yeah, so I'm just saying, David, that for me, right, even with all the responsibilities that you have, if you're not able to have proper mental health and mental well-being, there's no point in finding money for Mabugo because you will be the one who's dying soon. And so for me, the thing is that you see 200K. I see an investment in your well-being. And I'm not just saying this because we are, doing this for Aqua, with Aqua. I'm saying that from my personal experience, that no matter what happens, I will find a way every month of being able to go and do, it's called an integrated stress buster, where you come and do your 90 minutes, do some steam, do some sauna, because you need that. It's like servicing a car. So people will service differently, right? Like you said, you do exercise, you eat something, you go sport yourself, you go watch a movie, watch football, play football, whatever. For me, wherever it is possible where you can, if you can afford to, I think it's important that you find time to do things like this. And we're talking about the good spas, not the ones where they have other services that get added, and then you have even more problems at home when you go back and the wife will say, I'm just saying.
Allow me first to get into that. When you come to the spa, and it could be Aqua, it could be Aqua, which is, how many of these men do you find in this spa?
Because they have failed to understand the importance of it.
Now, look, I draw the line. The last time I was here to get a spa, rather to get a massage, the treatment, or it was, I had been to the gym.
Yeah.
I had strained a certain muscle, and I could not sleep. So I said to myself, but who can help? So a friend recommended, come, let's give you a neck and
we know the friend.
we know the friend. Let's give you a neck and shoulder massage.
Yeah.
I can tell you, did help, but not to the effect of my problems went away.
Yeah.
They're
not going to go away.
No,
right?
my problems did not go away.
Right.
The stress that I came with is still the stress that I'm going to find but it sorted the physical.
Yeah.
So I would do that. Anyway, I draw my line at doing sauna and steam bath.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I can still do that at the spa.
Yeah.
But to ask to be to get the hands on, no, I will not go there. Now allow me. But allow me.
Such a Munyankole.
I am a Munyankole 211. But I'll probably get in love with it.
Yeah.
Probably get you need to bring me around just the way you brought me with the boys. Here's the other thing. I was married about 5-6 years, and just back to the question. Yeah. Yes.
There was a keyword in there. You said.
I was married yes. I was married 5-6 years. But in those 5-6 years, the push to be better was there, and it was evident. So we're not sitting here and saying that the wives are our stress people. They sort of push you, and you sort of build that muscle to get to be better, not just for you, but for the family, for the children as well, for the entire people that you are, the Nwamanyas, the Mwines, you want to push, yes, the Mpangas, you want to push that. So we're not sitting here and saying, the wives are stresses. They're helping you to become better. The question is, how are they doing it?
There's actually a question about that. Somebody is asking, what is the one thing each of you would like any woman on this webinar to have as a take home? I think this is a perfect opportunity to deal with. So we can deal with that, and then I have another 5 or 6 questions that we must get through in the next 20 minutes or so. So Joe, if you are to say any one thing to this woman now, then on the call, what do you tell them? From the perspective of, as a man, your husband, your boyfriend is dealing with things, he's your best way to be able to approach that.
Ben, I think for me it would be just being supportive. I think supportive would be, the reason again we're saying we're looking for community, and I'll get into the point of let him go to the community and find the answers if he can't find them. But the ability to be able to talk, just the two of you. And I think what we have, borrowing from where I was.
But you know that husbands don't talk a lot, right? So that's going to be a problem already. Because
Well,
the woman wants to talk and you're not.
No,
you're not
let
really,
me tell you. It's not true.
Exactly.
It's not true that men don't want to talk, because when we're with our boys, we are talking.
Right.
Yeah. It's not that we don't want to talk. It's a question of how will I be perceived when I do tell you. Yeah. How will I be perceived? Yeah. How will I be perceived when I tell you this? How will I be perceived if I tell you I am struggling? I'm reading a book called Let Me Call You Back. Let Me Call You Back is a guy who has lost his job, and he's seeing a clinical psychiatrist, he's seeing a financial advisor, because his job has been terminated. He can't tell his wife because he's not sure how Ada will think about him at that point. So it's not that we don't want to talk, it's how we feel we'll be judged.
The woman on the call.
The woman on the call?
What do you say to a woman as a takeaway for a woman?
One, I think choose carefully what you say outside.
No, even
there.
inside. You repeat that statement, please.
Choose carefully what you
Carefully.
say. Because there are things that you're going to say about me before your relatives that I can't be forgiven for, and yet you would forgive me for. And when we work things out, it's already ruptured. The relationship, the other side is ruptured.
That's deep.
And now you're back with me, and you look like a fool before your people, before your friends.
Or they think that you're imprisoned and
Yes,
you're in
and
an
now you
abusive
can't even
relationship.
explain yourself why you love the guy you said so much about, and now you're back with him. So it's important, choose what do you say out there, but also choose your man. If anything, choose him instead of choosing everybody out there.
That's deep. I find that sometimes women can be very careless with their words because of the emotional place that they might be at that time. And I keep telling my wife that there are words that you say that you'll never be able to get back. So that thing of being very, very careful what you say, not just outside, but even to your man himself. Or I've had an experience where a woman tells a guy, I don't know why I married you. I think if I had gone with my ex, I'd have been better off. Yeah. How do you recover from that?
How do you recover from
How
that?
do you recover from that? How do you recover from that?
It's been said.
That's going to live rent free in your head for the rest of your life. Right? David,
She's
what
angry,
research-
and then she says, that's why your father is sleeping around. And,
Oh God.
and she's already said it.
For me, it's a book. But what did I tell a woman? What I tell a woman, number one, accept the differences between male and female. And by saying that, I know physically you can understand the differences, but you need to understand that You are more emotional in how you look at things in terms of you're expressing feelings. So maybe you might say words and use generic words like you always or you never. And yet what you really mean is a particular thing. And sometimes when you're coming to a situation, you're coming to complain rather than present solutions. So what I would say that if you want to maintain this person, accept that they've got fewer words than you, but when you're coming to interact with them, say what you'd want to say and make it look like you're in a solutions providing mode rather than an accusatory mode.
I'll just add one thing to that, to the women. Do yourself a favor and don't insist on knowing everything. And I'll tell you why. You need, at some point, you're going to be the only one holding your household together. Because your man doesn't have the bandwidth, things are tight. He's dealing with all of that. The moment he unleashes the entire kind of worms that you're dealing with, right? Because of the natural composition of women, women are predisposed to worrying. Okay? This is not about being sexist or toxic masculinity, whatever. The way God made us is that on average, the average woman will worry a lot more. Which is why I keep saying to people, there's 4 of us. If you put 4 women there and put a rat in the middle, statistically speaking, all the women will be running away. All the men will be trying to kick the rat. That's how different we are. Even the ones that fear it, they'll still be trying to kick the rat. So as a woman, if the man gives you 100% visibility into all the things that he is struggling with, you will not survive. Because then now even you will run mad. And if both of you are running mad, that's going to be a problem. What I say to women is this: hold the man's hand, massage his ego as much as you can. I'm hoping, again, one of the things that happens with all this stuff is that when we're dealing with stuff, we can be horrible human beings. We can be total douchebags when we're dealing with mental health issues. And we become really impossible to live with. I don't know how my wife has done it. Because you can sense, I'm like, I don't know how you're doing it, but I know that I'm very difficult to deal with. Just being able to hold the man's hand. So you know what, you'll be okay. You'll be fine. That makes a really, really, really big difference. Yes. Where would we be without them? Where would we be without them? Here's another question for you guys. One, this is coming from our host, actually. She says, has any of you guys treated your mental health condition with medication? And how was that experience? So, I know I have one. I'll share mine later on. But as you mull over that question and prepare to how to tell us the things that you are comfortable telling us with in case you've done that. Someone here who is a male says, right now, I feel like if I'm not financially stable, I am not deserving of a relationship. And I've decided to step back from dating for a while. I feel like I won't be able to sustain the relationship and what comes with it. Thoughts?
Thoughts very quickly would be, again, it's a misconception in a way. It's a misconception. I think it's about the people that we are meeting and and what we think they want from us. But I think you can still start a relationship. It's a standard you've set for yourself, and you don't want to get below that. But yes, truthfully, is that money worries are man's worries. We don't talk about that enough, but money worries are a big thing. But you can still find somebody out there who is not money minded, and you can do a walk on Naguru Hill. You can do things, or wherever it is that you stay.
You need the money though.
You do need the money. We're not saying we're not able to.
But I feel like this individual is hinging their importance on the money.
Yes.
You know, their importance is beyond the money itself.
That's the problem, right?
Yes, that's the problem.
I would
Would,
say
would any of us here advise your daughter to date a man without money?
yeah. If he's a good man and has a plan,
Exactly.
Yeah.
If he's a good man and he has a plan, you're
Yeah.
looking at the hope. Without
Yeah.
hope, you would
You're
be
looking at the
campaigning
hope,
that.
you're looking at the potential.
Yes, the
Yeah,
potential.
there's a yes and a no there. There's a yes and a no there. You don't marry a plan. You don't marry a plan. Let me put it this way. And that's because one, I'm a father of daughters only. Yep, I'm a father of
you
girls
see, David is
only.
looking at- I don't have daughters, so I wouldn't
I've
know.
interacted
So
with people, the fathers that have, because men, number one, they do have plans, and many times men's plans are more optimistic than realistic. We've got to know, and so you have to have a balance. And Moses, you like the word balance?
Yeah.
Yeah, you must have a balance.
You know
You
what?
must- you must have something, but you
this
must
one-
have, you
David.
must have a group,
Guys,
a dream where you're going.
This is a whole different conversation.
David, I was at. Let me allow me. David, I was at a funeral
Sure, and then
yesterday.
you quickly, and
I
then
was
we'll-
at a funeral yesterday.
Yeah.
We were sending off a
Ah,
friend to
yeah,
our father. Yeah.
yeah.
And I sat with a man who said, so the people who were talking about their wedding and
Yeah.
how their wedding was decorated with,
Toilet
with
paper
toilet paper
and
and bushes
yeah.
and stuff like that. I was seated next to a neighbor. He said, I got married. Our wedding, when I got married, what did he say? Our food was sumbusa
Yes.
and
It was a samosa and a soda in a pack, in an envelope,
in an
an
paper
envelope.
bag.
Yeah.
Then
That's David's wedding. That's how they
Yeah,
all got
yeah,
married.
that's- yeah.
But then he was,
I relate.
he was much younger. He's much younger than David.
Yeah.
So I said, so how did you do that? So I immediately figured that I asked him. So he said, I was 27 when I got married. I
Humble.
don't think that he had money. All he had was a plan.
Yeah.
No, he had a job.
Maybe, yeah.
But
Yeah,
you did mention,
no, we've got to be clear. As
So,
father, as
guys-
men, we've got to be clear. Ben, just allow this.
Yeah.
We've got to be clear. When you give a blanket statement and say the plan,
Plan.
too many men have more optimistic plans than realistic.
I think we agree
and
with
that's
you.
worrying. And that worries
David,
women.
I think.
Yeah. But if he's got a job,
Listen, I think
Go
Moses
ahead.
and I agree with you. We're simply saying that you can be able to tell, based on your interaction with a man, that he's actually going somewhere, not just a dreamer. Because I think what your fear is your daughters, and I fear for you who has daughters because I don't want that pressure. Thank God I don't have any daughters yet. Yeah, educated. But you can sense from a person that there might be some potential there. Okay. 10 minutes to go through about 10 questions. We're going to have to now to do rapid fire on this. Someone says, are men averted to therapy? How does that make them feel as an option? And this is also something that Denise Ketchumudi was saying. Denise, good to hear from you. Thanks a lot for being in touch. And Denise is saying that she's been doing perinatal bereavement advocacy. And one of the things that they're struggling with is how to pull the bereaved fathers into a community to help one another since they have experienced similar loss. And we know how big loss can be as a thing for mental health. I can't begin to imagine what Captain Babu is going through and Sudhir at the moment. If you can imagine, losing your child at that level where they are just beginning their lives. And she says, however, men lack the language to express their emotions. And so what they've had to do is bring a psychologist like yourself to be present in the sessions to facilitate and have these conversations with them. And she asked the same thing. Are men open to seeking therapy? If not, why? What's the narrative being sold? Okay. 20 seconds to deal with that. Yeah. Yeah.
which one? What was that?
We have an aversion.
To therapy.
Can-
Ben, allow me, because
Yeah.
I there was a question again on medical. Have we done
Yeah.
medical? Have we done?
Yeah.
And now it's come back again in
Yeah.
therapy. I have had the privilege of going to therapy twice
Yeah.
to see two different people.
Yeah.
One a clinical, somebody like your psychiatrist,
Yeah,
like
like
yourself,
Mr. Mpanga, yeah.
and I think the other was a counselor.
Yeah.
And like I said, it's what it felt to me, and allow me speak to me.
Yeah.
It felt like it's they use all these words. Let's unpack. Let's unpack for
Science.
you. Yes, your trauma, your childhood is causing you this thing and the other, and in a day or so, it's a feel good.
Right.
but it does not sort out. It does not sort out your mental, your mental well-being.
Yeah, yeah.
Now, for one, I think my experience was that I did a couple of sessions, and these are the couple of sessions where you have to weigh the value of what you're getting versus how much.
Because you are paying
Yes,
money
you're
for
paying.
it.
Yes,
Yeah?
how
You're
much
paying
you're
good
how
money
much you're
for
paying
it per hour.
So yes, we are open to going there.
Yeah,
we are
but-
open to looking for help, but we're not going to tell you that we are going there.
Yeah.
That's the truth. I'm not going to tell you I'm seeing a therapist.
20 seconds?
But allow
Yeah.
allow me finish. One yawned in my submission,
Hey,
and then I knew it was time for me to go home because clearly this person was not interested.
that was a bad
Yes,
therapist.
but anyway.
No. We have. I think it's important for us to realize.
Yeah.
We have, just like any job, just like anything you do, we have good ones and we have bad ones.
Yeah.
All right. But what is important for us to understand is that literally, and I usually say this, we are a total sum of our childhood. So when somebody
Yeah.
tells you that, what we are literally saying is that can we be able to tap into the unconscious layers and peel them back together? And I think it's important for us to understand that therapy is not something that is done for you. It is something that is done with you. All right?
Yeah.
So I do not take you away and then do the work for you, but you and I empower you to do better as
Yeah.
we unpack.
Right.
Just like you mentioned.
So, Noel Kajabango, it's good to hear from you. Haven't seen you in a while, bruh. He says that most important thing is safety. Safe space to make mistakes, to correct self, explore, express self. And I'll use that to also answer the question about have we had medical interventions? I have. I had a clinical depression in 2012. I went to a doctor. They did the diagnosis. They put me on a really horrible drug that kills you. And I took it for one day and said, I'm never going to take this drug again. If I can't be able to self-heal, it's okay. And from that day on, I've only had one other instance, I think about 3 years ago. Aside from that, and I think for me, you have been my key takeaway today.
Oh, thank you.
You've defined for me something that I've been grappling with, that I knew I needed to do and I've been trying to do,
Oh, thank
but
you.
didn't have the definition for it.
Thank you
The
so much.
self-healing. Which then comes into, and a big chunk of that self-healing comes from that safe space and the community. Joe and I were somewhere on Saturday with these boys, and we had such a good time just sitting and eating chapatis. You know you're going to put on weight, but it's okay. You're in a safe space anyway. Which then brings me to another question that someone asked here and says, what happens when you cannot find a community to be a part of? Is it safe for me to say that you're screwed?
Is that
Create
French?
it.
You're in trouble.
Yes.
Create it.
You have to, because
Create
you
it.
can't.
No,
but you can't do without it, Joe.
Let's yeah.
We are naturally social beings.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can't do without it.
Yeah.
Science, English.
Yeah. No, ask me to break it down.
Yeah.
Because if you can't find it, you're the one who knows you need it. I've had a situation when I was having marital conditions, when I was also struggling with, eyes going all over, and I had to look for help.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
That's what I call create.
Yes.
Because if you can't find it, you have to. It's sad that some of these words we use seem very simplistic, because you're on a show. You can't break it down, all right? And even that word you said, unpack, those are words that never used with anybody. And
Yeah.
by the way, also in psychology and psychiatry, there are various schools of thought. There's a school of thought which always says that everything you're going through is because of the past.
Yeah.
Please be careful.
Yeah.
That even when you're going there to those psychologists, you've also got to do your homework. Then there are others who also, and that's the challenge. And then for me, I belong to a school of thought which says, look ahead. It's called logotherapy.
Yeah.
And it came from somebody who used to believe in that thing, that everything is a function of your past. Therefore, but he realized that what keeps people going is the forward, not
Yeah.
explanation of the past.
That
So for me, I'm thinking, get the courage to to create it.
Yeah.
Start small.
If you don't have one,
Yeah.
you be the one to start
Yeah.
and go and
It
get a bunch
sounds
of guys and say,
simplistic.
guys,
But you have to try.
sit down and drink water. You don't even have to spend money on it.
If my client is David
Yeah.
seated before me, I'm going to try as much as possible to make sure that my interaction with David is in alignment with David, because I know there are certain things within therapy that are going to put David off. With how he's speaking right now, there are
Yeah.
certain things.
That
You know
will push him even further away.
Yes, yes.
One last question for you guys to deal with, and it's a deep one. And actually, I think we're supposed to be doing another space in the next week or so with the Credit Reference Bureau Association, in particular regarding this, because it's a whole topic on its own. But I'll leave it with you guys to deal with very quickly. How do I navigate the emotional and social effects of financial strain I hear Joe sighing. And David, especially, it gets better. When debt repayment consumes all of my income, don't we know the feeling? A bit. A bit. Said, I find myself avoiding interactions and focusing only on my survival, but I know that it isn't sustainable. What strategies can help me regain control over my financial and mental well-being? I can answer this very quickly. Like I said, currently my debt burden is big enough to fund a small district, and it's tough. I was telling someone just this week that when my little salary, okay, it's not little, I have a decent salary, to be honest. I'm paid well. Thanks to Mr. Karisa, I get a decent salary, but I don't touch any of it. All right? I hardly touch any of it. So what I will end up surviving on mostly is my creativity and MC gigs, right? But on average, every little money that comes in is going to be going to try and deal with debt, which are almost difficult to keep up with because the debt is so much bigger than the income that it's almost impossible to even apportion. But the thing that I learned to do is, one, accepting where I am at and being able to say to people in certain cases. So I'll tell you personally, for example, at the moment, we have a situation where you've got 2 patients that are indisposed. So you have to deal with that. You think about what do you do with school, what do you do? It's a lot. But the idea is to be able to say, one step at a time, where am I? What's my level now? How do I bite off little things at a time? Where if you owe a person 60 million shillings, you tell them, you know what, I can only give you 50K. It's their prerogative to take you to jail, and they can do that, and they will do that. But in your situation, you can only manage where you are and make peace with your circumstance, and then figure out how do I stay. And again, something I tell people, focus on staying sane and staying alive, because eventually you will get a breakthrough, a deal will come through. God will multiply food in your stomach.
That one, eh?
God will multiply food in your stomach. So I say hang in there, but more than anything else at the moment, find people that you can, and don't be afraid to ask for help. One of the things that men struggle with, me, I have no problem. When, like now, school fees is due, I am completely at zero, I have nowhere to go. I'm able to go to the boys and say, guys, I can't borrow money from you for obvious reasons, right? If you have a donations budget, you throw something.
Ben, there's a boy who's going to say, you have to hold it together.
Yeah.
You know, how do you then respond to such a boy? There's a boy there's a man out there who is, even now, who is listening.
Yeah.
Who is going to throw you under the bus and then say, no, this guy's got to get his...
Well, I do get that, by the way. There are places where you ask a man and say...
That's where it gets worse. How do you manage that?
Because
But
you
in
learn...
close circle?
You
In your close
No,
circle,
in your close circle,
he's
you're
not
okay.
going to say that.
Yeah.
Not necessarily, but sometimes the reaction might give you the same vibes.
In the
And the
close
thing that you must do...
Yeah, because again, when you're being vulnerable,
The-
you don't know what is coming
David,
your way.
the insensitivity that comes to you sometimes is not intentional. Okay? It's just that by personality, the way Joy is structured, you say, but you, why can't you get yourself together, right? And in their own sense, they are trying to help you, right? What you said.
Yeah.
The creative thinking.
Yeah. But you know the guy
and-
you're helping for 2 years?
Right?
That's my understanding of that question.
Yeah,
that,
I know.
That you walk with somebody that way.
And-
And so when you're walking with somebody that way, the other question that Moses has brought up will not
Yeah.
come out. Now, the one in the outer circle
Thank you.
can tell you, man up.
Yes.
That's not the one to go to.
No, and you
the
will
one
learn.
that you want
You
is the one
only
that
learn
then-
after they've
You
said
learn.
it sometimes.
You pay school fees. So eventually, the most important thing is to be able to humble yourself and understand that you are in a position where, as the Bible says, the borrower is a slave to the lender, and humble yourself. It comes with some humility, a lot of it, but eventually you're able to go through it. But more than anything else, you learn to try and be able to make sure that your life doesn't end. So as we wrap up, before I give you guys a chance to say one last thing as your Kiki Kitakaway, want to say a big thank you to Mine Uganda. Want to say a big thank you to Protea Marriott at Skies Naguru, who've given us a wonderful place to do this. And we are not saying this because we know the place well, but it's actually important for you as a man, when you can, whenever you can, at some point, to come and go to a spa. And Aqua Wellness Spa is professional, it's legit. You won't get extra benefits from it. You'll get actual professional treatment. If you know, you know. And also a big thank you to Creation Architects, represented by they said what? Executive Director, Managing Director, CEO, and all the titles that come with it. Founder.
and CEO.
Chair of board, you know.
No, thank you so much. Mr. Kabiswa, parting shots.
Parting shots.
Yeah.
One, I am committed to the father-son relationship and developing
that one.
programs about how men can bring up boys, because there is a gap there.
Yeah.
All right. Two, not everything we say on show here can give you the full context of what we say.
Yeah.
And so sometimes there's certain phrases might be, interpreted whichever way. But that's it.
Yeah.
I've done a spa, and for people who might want to do that, it can also help you build a lot of the oxytocin. Those are the happy hormones in your wife. Go together.
And dopamine.
Go together.
Yeah.
So that,
oh,
that
couples.
you go together.
Couple would
Go
be
together.
nice. Yes.
All right, so I've done that, and it is something that I'd recommend. Go,
Couples
you-
is big.
go-
Thanks,
go-
David. Yeah.
The
Date
last thing I
night
would say,
something.
Yeah.
men rarely focus on personal development. Men rarely focus on personal development. So some of the things that we're saying here can sound science. I'm saying that until men pick up their things and get into personal development, we can struggle alone. So I'd say read, listen, watch. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Joe.
Thank you, Ben. It's been quite a beautiful discussion. Loved it very, very much. The energy. I hope it was out there. But just wanted to say to the men, and also to the women that have men who have not appeared on this thing, and you'd like your man, is that you are not an island.
Yeah.
As a man, you're not an island. We just need to you just need to feel better than find the tools. I know the tools are there. Counseling, we've talked about it. We've talked about spa. We've talked about community. But I think for me now is that when I live here, is that the being able to self-heal is where you need to be going. Being able to cope with stress.
Yeah.
And that is going to be different for everybody, but let's see how we do with that. Today I may feel better.
Yeah.
Tomorrow may not be such a good day for me, but God forbid. Thank you. Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. Men, come for therapy. All right? Come for therapy, and when you come, we are not replacing you with somebody or something else. We just are going to have intentional conversations. Now, let me share a very brief analogy. If you are carrying a jerrycan, 20-liter jerrycan, from point A to point B, you'll be able to do that.
Yeah.
All right? But if you carry a 20-liter jerrycan full of water for 1 hour, 2 hours, eventually your arm is going to break or something bad is going to happen to it. If you are dealing with stress significantly for a longer period of time, it's not going to leave you the same. It's definitely going to leave some physiological effect or impact on you. When you come through and we are able to release that or kickstart you to release that on yourself, since we are self-healers, it goes a long way. Mindness Uganda, the organization for which I am a founder and executive director,
Yeah.
we journey
I need to
with
find
you
something
through
too,
this. So we'll be happy to receive you when you come through.
And you
Let's
can
do
just,
this
I'm sure if you just Google and look for Mindness, you'll be able to find the details and
Yes.
on the socials and everything. So, thanks a lot, Moses Mpanga, Joe, Nwamanya, Okun.
No. Ben, can we be friends?
Yeah,
Can we be friends?
deal. It's done. The incredible, David Kaviswa. It's been an absolute delight spending time with you guys. It's been incredible. And to our sponsors, Aqua Wellness Spa here at Protea Marriott at Skies Naguru, which you should come visit. Thank you so much. To Creation Architects, of course, Joe, and to Minet Uganda, and Benji and the entire team. All you wonderful guys over there. It's been an absolute delight being with you. Do share the recording of this with the men that you think need it, and the wives who need to be able to support the men and want to learn some more. If you need to find us, I'm sure if you go to the socials and tag us, we are more than glad to have a conversation. All these men here have experience, especially David, that they can be able to use. That can be very useful to you, but above all else, I think my parting shot would be just find peace at your level. And it's never that bad. No matter how bad it is, paint worst case scenario and then work from there. You will be fine. A friend of mine says something to me 2 weeks ago that I've picked up on and I use now a lot. Said every time you finish the day, you just promise yourself and say, tomorrow will be better. If tomorrow fails, you keep saying, eventually one tomorrow will be better, and it will get better. God bless you. God bless Uganda. Have a happy Mother's Day. Bye-bye.